Welcome to Breakaway USA podcast with Fabian and Michael. We've got a fantastic podcast. We're gonna dive into some interesting topics. They're looking for more funding for the war in Israel and Ukraine. Mike Johnson is a brand new Speaker of the House. We're going to talk about Newsom meeting with dictators. And Missouri versus Biden is a censorship case that everybody needs to know about. So, Fabian, you want to talk about the 100 billion that they're wanting for Ukraine and Israel?
So the Biden administration, in all their wisdom, has requested another $100 billion as a supplemental request to Congress. So this hasn't gone through because we haven't had a speaker. So let me just kind of go over what they're asking for, because $100 billion, it's not a drop in the bucket. I mean, I think the figure to fix the border wall was only like a few $billion, maybe like $11 billion or something like that. They're asking for 10 times that. So let's just kind of go over what they're asking. They want 61 billion for Ukraine and for replenishing the U.S. stockpile, which includes 30 billion for Pentagon equipment, 14 billion for Pentagon intelligence, 16 billion for State Department and U.S. aid, and 481 million to support Ukrainians who flee the U.S. In addition to that, they want to give 14 billion for Israel-related assistance. Very vague on what exactly that is. And 9 billion for humanitarian assistance for the Gaza Strip and Israel. So, US doing what we do and playing both sides of the, 3 billion for submarines, 2 billion for security assistance in the Indo-Pacific region, 11 billion for border security and migrant matters. Okay, that one I did not see, but
Can I interrupt you quickly? It's just we throw around these numbers like 11 billion, 10 billion. It's absurd, right? These are insane amounts of money. We've already given Ukraine $200 billion, and they want another 60 billion. This is baffling, and it's like monopoly money, right?
Yeah, this seems like one of those, they call them a Christmas tree bill, where everyone just hangs their ornament and it gets passed. So in addition to that, they want $1 billion for countering fentanyl. Don't know how that's going to help Ukraine. 100 million for combating child labor exploitation, and 2 billion to counter China in developing countries. So yeah, I'm very interested in seeing how this plays out with Mike Johnson, the new speaker, and how he's going to address this $100 billion.
I got a feeling he's going to shut it down very quickly. Like very, very quickly. So I actually have a little bit of his congressional resume pulled up here. So this is according to Red Eagle Politics on X, Twitter.
And for anyone listening, Mike Johnson has just been elected the Republican Speaker of the House as of yesterday, after 3 weeks of, back and forth.
Vacancy.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is, I think he's going to be one of the best speakers of the House for a couple of reasons. This resume right here is going to be one of them. So Mike Johnson has voted against every Ukraine package since the first one and has received an F grade from the pro-Ukraine scorecard. He signed on to Ken Paxton's Texas versus Pennsylvania, voted to object to 2020 election results and urged every other House Republican to do so, aided Trump's legal counsel in both bogus impeachment trials, called for Nancy Pelosi to be arrested, voted for the de facto immigration moratorium, and has a career A grade from Numbers USA on that. He introduced the Stop Sexualization of Children Act to combat the alphabet extremism, supports prayer in public schools and still opposes gay marriage, is outwardly opposed to Bill Kristol, Adam Kinzinger, and Mitt Romney. That's a pretty good resume to have.
That's epic. Yep.
As the brand new Speaker of the House. I'm pumped on this.
That's a firebrand Republican. Love it.
I hope he comes through.
And Gentry and I were talking about this before the podcast. I was after Jim Jordan getting not voted in, I was very appalled by the fact that he was able to get voted by all the members of, all congressional members. And what I kind of took from it is that maybe he's been kind of behind the scenes and hasn't made all the enemies that maybe a Jim Jordan type has over the years, where they were okay with voting for him. But it's interesting.
I got you. So Mike Johnson was able to be kind of unanimously voted in. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
And it was surprising. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
not unanimous, but it was.
What was-
It, yeah, it seems like he has stayed true to who he is, but he hasn't made all the enemies like a Matt Gaetz or Jim Jordan or even a Trump character, which I think is super advantageous for him. I've had a couple of DMs from people from Louisiana, and I had one guy say, I actually know Mike Johnson personally. He's a fantastic man of faith. This is one of the best things that could have happened to America.
Yeah,
Interesting.
100%.
The times they are changing. I think
Mhm.
I responded to a comment yesterday, and it really feels like the winds are starting to finally shift and things are starting to find a little equilibrium. I mean, we still have a long way to go until some kind of normalcy returns, but this, and with the Supreme Court decisions that I know we're going to talk about today, it seems like things are starting to kind of find its place, I guess.
Yeah. So, quick commentary on his resume, particularly about the 2020 election. This is kind of, I'll touch on also Jenna Ellis making an apology, because the left, what they've done with the 2020 election, they've just gaslighted the heck out of all Republicans. They've weaponized the media to such an extent where if you even suggest that there was irregularities and that the 2020 election wasn't perfect, then they call you an election denier, and they try to ridicule you and whatnot. And it's absurd, that you see them asking Vivek, do you believe the 2020 election? And he's very careful with his wording, and he's saying, I think that the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop was election interference, and that it played a significant role in the outcome of the election, and could have actually had an effect on the outcome of the election, because of this many people said that they would have voted differently if they knew about this laptop from hell, or But so what we have to start, and I understand why Jenna Ellis has done this. They've been at war with, anybody who questions the 2020 election. It's a very calculated thing. They need to make you submit. They need to make you, reject your principles or whatever, so that they can stop you from doing something like this in the future, right? They have to use the full weight of the government against you. And they've weaponized the government, and it's insane to see. You can't even say, like, what happened to freedom of speech in this country? You can't say that the 2020 election was stolen. It's an opinion, first of all. Second of all, I think it's fact. I can remove that from any video we have for YouTube or whatnot. And for a moment, if you're watching on Instagram or something, we're going to remove this part and put it on Rumble only. But the 2020 election was clearly...
Now to your regularly scheduled program.
We have to find a way to fight back this psyop that's happened, this mass psychosis, this whatever they've done to weaponize the media, the government against us with January 6th. It's all nonsense. January 6th was we know that January 6th was not what they made it out to be. They used the media to...
Gentry, I know he's going to talk about the Supreme Court case, which goes on to what you're saying, Michael, about the censorship thing, which I think is a very good thing. I wanted to make one point on what you were saying, how they paraded Jenna Ellis out there and they made her read this. She looks like a kidnapped person reading a letter. She's crying. This is exactly what Mao did. He would get you to recant what you truly believe for the greater good, quote unquote, and then parade you around and say, look what we did to them. If you want to be made an example like them, then do what she did. But if you don't, then shut up. So that's exactly what they were doing. It's Mao's playbook all over again. But I know that we have a case, a Missouri versus Biden case that I just found out about.
Yeah, so this is very, very interesting. So Missouri, there's a senator in Missouri. He is suing the Biden administration for basically censorship, right? And the details of the case are Biden is asking social media companies to take down posts that they think are going to be harmful to American citizens. But the reality is all the posts that they're being asked to take down are posts that are anti-Biden. So it kind of goes along with the Mao, any kind of dictator type regime. They're trying to just silence the opposition. And obviously we have the freedom of speech. So we have the ability to question elections, question lockdowns, question vaccines, question, what kids have been like. We have the right.
Mhm.
So, but what's happening in this case is there's the Court of Appeals in Missouri. They sided with the senator from Missouri, which is amazing. And then the Biden White House appealed it. And then it went up again, and then sided with Missouri, and then the Biden White House appealed it. So now this Missouri versus Biden is getting kicked up to the Supreme Court, which is unbelievable. So now the Supreme Court, by the way, a very conservative constitutional Supreme Court, is going to hear a case on censorship and free speech. And everybody should be watching this. Everyone should be paying attention to this, because this will 100% impact the rest of our lives, the rest of America's life, right? I don't see any world where our Supreme Court sides with the Biden White House.
But not because of the Biden White House, because this is just clear cut unconstitutional, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
As far as I can remember, this is the biggest case that we've had with censorship since social media came out, unless I'm mistaken. So this will have, like you were saying, this will play a large part. This will add to the body of jurisprudence that any judge down the line will have to refer to when making a case. But it's just sad that we have to get to this point where we have to give, clearly this is illogical and it goes against the First Amendment, but it's just so sad that we have to get this all the way to mom and pop at the Supreme Court and say, can you please, tell my older brother that what he's doing is stupid and he can't do it. And then we have to wait until mom and pop say, yeah, that's actually not right. It shouldn't be like that.
Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons why this is like a really, really big deal is because of Section 230. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but essentially it absolves forums from being liable for the content that other people are posting, right? So you and I, like we're going to be responsible for the content we post on there. However, because of censorship and because they're curating people's feeds and even the algorithm, even if the algorithm isn't censoring, potentially it could be seen as publishing because it's pushing certain kinds of content. And so this is kind of where the legalese comes in. And I'm not, very well versed on that, but I think there's a pretty decent argument that could say with censorship, you guys are actually being publishers and now you're liable. And we're seeing all this crazy stuff coming out that's saying,
that we penetrate the cabinets.
We talked about that earlier on a previous episode where Pfizer came out and said, hey, if you take the vaccine, you're actually going to have an increased risk of myocarditis. And so social media companies are now censoring that information. And that has huge implications, right?
Yeah. So Section 230, from what I understand, allows them to, well, so it's exactly what you said, but so it allows them to censor because they're not in the public domain. They are actually private companies, so they're not seen as utilities. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, we need to modernize kind of the approach to these platforms, these softwares, and say that they are utilities. Like and utilities, public utilities, are subject to the Constitution and are subject to freedom of speech laws, right? So utilities in terms of telephone providers or internet, you can't refuse somebody access to the internet because of their political or their opinion. You can't refuse somebody access to radio or television, whatnot. So they need to be seen as something that is in the public domain because it is the town square. Right? It is the modern day town square. And so freedom of speech needs to apply. And then what everybody on the left said for the longest time is that, oh yeah, well, it's a private company. You need to go make your own private company. And then Elon goes and buys Twitter and makes it, a freedom of speech haven, and we have Rumble now, and they're saying, oh, these are far right extremists. It's like they do a really good job at putting themselves into a bubble, into an echo chamber, and just convincing themselves and justifying these things that are unjustifiable in any reasonable way for anybody with a functioning prefrontal cortex. They're completely ridiculous. But so Section 230 was talked about to be repealed for a long time, right? And that is something that I think that Mike Johnson, as the Speaker of the House, can look into, right?
Here's one thing I just thought about as you guys were talking about Section 230, and Mike, you were talking about how there's certain utilities that you can't be stopped from having. So if that's the case, I know that
access to.
Exactly. So in California, even if you don't pay your light bill, technically they can't shut it off, right? Because it's the utility that you need. So if they can't kick you off from having light because of non-payment, I wonder what kind of comparison a lawyer can draw to saying, well, if they can't kick you off having light because of not paying a bill, then potentially they can't kick you off of social media for not saying what they want you to say. You can draw like a parallel between those two things and argue it. If it is a fact that it ends up being classified as a utility, which I think it should, because the internet is just communication, and so is this.
Right. To reiterate what you said, Gentry, and it just really it's such a good point. If they are liable for the censoring that they're doing, then they are a lot less incentivized to censor people on a political basis or censor people on an ideological basis, right? Because we're, like you're saying, we've seen that if they pushed information that was wrong, that actually led to the death of people, and if they censored information that could have been life-saving and there was liability involved, it's the same thing with the pharmaceutical companies. All liability was waived for this experimental, injection. That's insane. There's no other product available anywhere in any form, in any, industry, that the company is not liable whatsoever for, especially something that gets injected into somebody's body. But this is the hysteria that people were in, where there was just like no question, and just, listen to the government. The government is king. When you get people into a state of fear like that, they choose security over their morals and their principles.
There was actually a case situation that happened with Facebook a few years ago that deals with exactly this subject. So Facebook, they developed a Supreme Court of Facebook, literally. So you take your whatever misinformation or censorship and you take it up to their version of Supreme Court. And what they did was they hired people that were very diverse, like females, males, people from different countries.
Yeah, diverse.
Yes.
Diverse on the surface, not in thought.
Exactly. Yeah, just on the surface. But the reason why it had to be disbanded was because if they had a Supreme Court, they were deciding what freedom of speech is within their own platform, which is completely illegal and against the Constitution. So they had to disband that Supreme Court. And I wonder again, I'm just thinking about how a lawyer will present this case, because there's a lot of things to pull from and a lot of examples to pull from. So it's going to be extremely interesting. I would love to see the oral argument when this comes up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Section 230 needs to be repealed.
I think it's pretty damning for the Biden administration, because one of the things that they've uncovered, especially with the Twitter files, is Facebook was having meetings with the White House on a weekly basis. And DHS, FBI, and other three-letter agencies were in on this. And every time that the courts sided with Missouri, which is essentially the American people, they said, hey, they're gonna grant a provision and say, hey, like, you can't interfere with this. So I don't know if you guys have noticed in the last year, but there's been some great times on social media, and then when it gets appealed, there's been some bad times on social. So it's very cyclical in that way. And I wonder.
There's a war going on. There's a battle going on, right?
1,000%.
We're at war. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
To tie it back, to January 6th, and January 6th, we know was
Rocky Dingo.
And they're literally using the FBI to persecute their political opponents who by any standard were, peaceful protesters, and they made it out to be this Hollywood style, film. They made it out to be an insurrection, which is ridiculous. It was a production, but you have people that are otherwise reasonable people, like Bill Maher and these people, saying they tried to overthrow the government. If you believe that, like, you're so brainwashed, it's crazy. It was literally a protest for something that the American people believed in, which is a right that's protected under the Constitution, and is just even China. Well, I don't know about China, but most countries in the world have this right protected to protest. But they had to turn it into this. And I think it was actually a strategic mistake to actually have this event, because if we thought, like, they think 2 steps ahead, or they have been thinking 2 steps ahead of us every time. And it's just like, they see there's going to be 1 million people in Washington, D.C. They have think tanks, and they have the CIA and the FBI, like, okay, how do we use this against them? How do we use this to get Donald Trump out? It's just clear that they've done this forever. But so to go back to the 2020 election briefly, this was a coup d'etat, right? They overthrew a duly elected government, but through a psyop, not through a military overthrowing, right? And it's very well documented. And in the future, we're on the right side of history. I'm 100% sure of this. This is not even a question. It's just that there's such a narrative built that, you have people that like people that are in the Senate that believe that the election was stolen, that can't say it. They can't say that the election was stolen, because otherwise the whole media apparatus will go after them and say that they're kooks and whatnot. It's crazy how, this is out of a movie, right? This is out of V for Vendetta, and the collusion between the government and social media, and orchestrating and censoring and pushing propaganda. We're at war. We're at war with forces, domestic and foreign forces that are just globalists. It's a new kind of war. It's 5th generation warfare, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and as I've referenced before, beautifultrouble.org, which is a leftist activist website, which gives you strategies and tactics on how to fight. And like you said, Mike, they're always 2 steps ahead. And one of the things that they do is your real action is your target's reaction. So they do things to get a reaction out of you. And I've been seeing this, as I said before.
It happens in every sport. It happens in every sport too.
Exactly. When I've been going to these rallies and things, I'm noticing how they set the right up for this reaction. One of the sad things that I just saw, and I'm sure you saw the video, was there was a gentleman who was driving through a rally. They had blocked off the freeway with cars, and there was just thousands of people for the pro-Palestine rally. The guy was trying to get through. They started hitting his car. He got out with the knife. He got back in, and they were attacking him. And then he drove, and he could not get away because they blocked the road off. So he drove back, and he almost hit some people. And there's always videos of him or people saying, he tried to kill us. But that was made specifically to find one person that was going to overreact in that situation and felt scared. Not overreact. That's the wrong word. To react correctly, to think, I'm going to get killed by this mob of thousands of people. And clearly, the only thing I can do is drive away, and they block you from driving away because they want that headline. They want someone to get hit or possibly killed because it makes a better headline. And then look at what the right's doing. They're anti-Israel. So they do this on purpose.
Absolutely. So this goes to the idea of never let a good crisis go to waste. Rahm Emanuel and, Hillary Clinton is repeated, and it's a Saul Alinsky thing. And it's one of the main tactics on the left. But also, so it's never let a good crisis go to waste. But now they see that the powers that they can appropriate in a crisis. And so if there isn't a crisis, you either manufacture one, because you have the power of the media, which is literally a Hollywood production capable, right? They can. So I actually think that the whole COVID pandemic was a complete.
Ay, caramba!
This
Right?
will go on Rumble only.
Yes, this will go on Rumble. If you want to know my opinion personally about about the pandemic, I think it was actually, so go on Rumble. We're gonna cut here.
You're playing music too loud, right to jail, right away.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
And the only way they can win this 2020 election is with mass mail-in ballots. And if you know, a lot of people will refer to, they have family members that died of COVID, and they know people that, you know, or they know somebody of somebody that, and what I would say to that is, okay, how do you know they died of COVID, right? First of all, died with COVID or of COVID. Now, my further controversial opinion is I think COVID.
Here at Augusta High School that led to Chris Wood's death. The f is that? Shit! I'm dying in this fucking country-ass up town.
But there's plenty of books, you know, there's a book called Inventing the AIDS Virus in the 1990s. This guy, Peter Duesberg, and there's a foreword by Kerry Mullis, the inventor of the PCR process. He questioned the fact that HIV is the cause of AIDS and saying that there's no virus called HIV, and this is in the 90s. And then there's another book called Virus Mania, it was written in 2000s. There's Contagion Myth, there's all kinds of books, and there's a lot of doctors that are saying this is like a complete, this is like climate change, right? And it's very lucrative. If there's a little pathogen that we're at war with, we need to make medicines that are very profitable, right? And if it's something to do with our lifestyles, it's something to do with the food that we're eating and the toxins in our food and the toxins in our water, what do we have to do? We have to change our diets. That's not very profitable.
Yeah, and to go back to your 2020 point, with the pandemic, personally, I believe so. Think about if you're the Democratic Party and you're Hillary Clinton and you were supposed to get in, and Trump just derailed your entire plan from Obama to Clinton to maybe, you know, Michelle Obama, whoever they want after. They were like, we got to get this guy out because he's ruining everything that we've planned.
Mm-hmm.
You have. If you're a
4 years to plan, 4 years to plot,
yes,
and they try to do it every step of the way. You're right.
Exactly. But they've had nuclear options sitting in their back pocket for a situation like this. Mm-hmm. How else can you get Trump out? All right, we have nuclear option number one.
Potassium bromate. Potassium bromate! This supermarket is trying to kill us!
Like every single thing that has been done, I believe, because they have a plan for something like this to have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that's why Newsom is meeting with Xi Jinping?
Absolutely.
I mean,
we can get into that.
Some dots here, but I mean, it seems like they're setting him up to run, but then also why would he be meeting with Xi Jinping? Like China's kind of a known enemy of ours.
Two communists having a meeting. Just, you know, casually.
Well, so there is an aspect of he is the governor of, you know, 35 million people, which is literally the size of Canada. We have 30
largest economy in the world, California.
So I mean, it's quickly tanking, and he's literally destroying that beautiful state. But and I think California should probably be red but California, we know, is riddled with election. You know, you don't even want to touch that is a whole different beast. But so there is something to be said about him meeting with, you know, China. But we do want to have diplomatic relationships with these countries, right? And I've said this before, that I think that we don't need to see China and Russia as enemies. Maybe we do, but I think that we disagree with their governance structure and their governance mode. But who are we to try to change the government of 1.2 billion people? That's not our job, right? If we don't want to be interventionist, so we do want to have diplomatic, and yes, we should criticize them when they have humanitarian and, you know, things with the Uyghurs and different policies they have that are cruel. But I mean, we have political prisoners here, right? Like, people criticize Russia for political prisoners. We had January 6th peaceful protesters that walked through the Capitol building, and there's video evidence that they didn't have any trial. They were basically put in like a Guantanamo Bay style prison, put in solitary confinement for long periods of time. Like, we're becoming what we're calling other countries, or what we've been calling other countries for a long time. But sorry, back to Gavin Newsom meeting with Xi Jinping. What's your take on that? So you think that they've been trying to get Biden out, and they're kind of putting him on the world stage now?
Jeff, you want to take that, and I'll go after. 'Cause I got a point to make about the China issue.
I'm sure you
Yeah,
do.
so there's been a lot of speculation that they're gonna put someone else besides Biden, right? He has been I think a huge disappointment to the DNC in a lot of ways, mostly because of his health, right? Like he had like a butt chin the other day, just looked unbelievably tired. He's can't walk upstairs, he rumbles, he's not doing his job, right? We all know he's not actually doing his job because he's got like puppeteers, right? But he's also like incompetent, which in my opinion, that's elder abuse in so many ways. But they're trying to figure out, okay, who are they going to run next? And a lot of people are saying that Michelle Obama or Big Mike could potentially run.
We got to do it
but-
every time.
We have to. But we're also seeing that, I mean, to be honest, this is a PR stunt. I don't understand the PR stunt. I don't understand why this got headlines or why it happened.
Well, why China? Yeah. that's
Okay,
the
so
question.
Exactly.
let me give my opinion on this, because I've thought about this a lot. So if your goal is if the left's goal is to allow the citizens to give up more of their power, the freedom of speech, we know exactly what they want. China has already done that. This is why they don't allow LGBTQ alphabet soup, because they've already used the Red Guard, and this already happened in the 60s and the 70s. They already got to where they wanted to go. There's no freedom whatsoever that the government doesn't grant you in that country. We have social credit scores. You can't get out of your district without looking at a camera and smiling. The very act that they make you smile before it will open the door for you makes it, that's a
I didn't know that.
psychological thing. Yes, you have
That's
to
a thing?
smile before you can get out. Now, Newsom, why is he going to China? In my estimation, the left has done a very good job of turning the population against Israel, number one. Now, if you send the left's biggest rock star in Newsom to China to cozy up to China, you will turn the population that loves Newsom and the left pro-China policies. And we understand what they've done with locking everything down, with cameras everywhere, with the persecution of the Uyghurs, like you mentioned, Mike.
Okay.
What better way to turn people's opinion of China positive than to have your biggest rock star go there, then run for president, and then have a cozy relationship with China, and then start importing what they're doing even more to the United States?
Interesting take. Clip it.
All right, guys, thank you for listening to this week's podcast of Breakaway USA. If you've listened this far, don't forget to like, comment, share, save. We appreciate all the support, and thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, folks.